This is the Lombardi Line here on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Dave Ross, here at Circus Sports, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Look who it is, America. Ryan Leaf joins the program today. Ryan, back home in Connecticut. Can we call Connecticut home now?
We can. 2 years, in fact.
I guess that's home if you're there for 2 years. I've been out here. This is year 3 for me, so I guess I can call Vegas home as well. Ryan, great to have you in the program, my friend, today. We got a great show lined up. Of course, going to have Matt Youmans join us here in hour number 1. Mike DeFabo is going to join us in hour 2 to talk a little Steelers and Ravens with the big-time divisional implications on the line there. And then JVT, Jonathan Von Tobel, joins us in hour number 2 as well. But, Ryan, I got to ask, we had a double dip of Monday Night Football last night. Maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing to the eye game from a quarterback position that I'm sure you've seen before. But we did see the Vikings look good in that second half. They blow out the Bears 30-12. And the Falcons and their losing streak, 15-9, blocked extra point late, mattered to a lot, depending on the closing number where you might have had. If you were laying the Falcons 5.5, you might have got there. If you had 6.5 with the Raiders, it didn't matter. What's your takeaway, Ryan, as we delve deeper into these Monday Night Football games? And I'll start with the one out here in the desert. Kirk Cousins, it hasn't looked pretty, Ryan, but they get the job done, maybe just not the way they wanted to get it done.
It's almost like a situation where you were hoping for maybe a loss if you were a Falcons fan hoping to look towards the future, because now they are 7-7 and they're very much in reach of still winning the division title versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now the Bucs are ascending; they are playing as good a football as anybody right now, and so if Atlanta loses that football game, there's a really good chance over the last 3 weeks we see Michael Penix Jr., which is unbelievable to the amount of money that was handed to Kirk Cousins, almost $100 million for 2 years, to then see the rookie quarterback that was drafted in the first round that a lot of people thought was a mistake, be the answer. So this kind of puts them in no man's land a little bit. They found a way to win against a Raiders team that is very bad, playing with their third string quarterback, no Max Crosby, and just kind of fighting its way through to figure it out. Is Antonio Pierce going to be around next season? After one season as a head coach, I don't know if Tom Brady as a semi-owner now is going to allow for something like this. I don't know how much say he's going to have in it, but this was one of those games. It almost sounded like Chris Fowler, who was calling the game, was muted almost. It was so undertone. Louis Riddick was the only one that was really kind of speaking, because I think he wants the Jets job. I think he just wants to be out there more than I don't know what's going on with Dan Orlovsky there. But it was not a great broadcast. It was not a great game. Yet I chose to do the VSiN show to my debut Tuesday morning, so it was up till midnight watching this debacle.
Yeah.
For those of you out there that had the right number, yeah, people in Vegas were pretty happy when that extra point was blocked and away they went.
Yeah, well, you had to do your homework and make sure you watch. And I have buddies in town here in Vegas, and we were kind of watching over a nice dinner, and I'm like, boy, this is really bad football that I'm watching. Thankfully, it was muted for me, so I didn't have to listen to it, Ryan. But, that's the part that I want to get to. And Raheem Morris had some comments that I wanted us to listen to about Kirk Cousins, because we've seen Kirk in the past, and certainly even at the beginning of the year, Ryan, he had moments. He's throwing for over 500 yards when they're beating the Bucs, and it looks good at times. Let's hear from Raheem and his evaluation of the quarterback position.
He's got to play better. And, obviously you got to go back, you got to be able to look at everything. But, he wants to play better. He's got to play better. We got to find a way to get him to play better. And obviously we'll get to work tomorrow, and that's a part of our process, right? You go, you look at the tape, you review with the people that needs to be reviewed with. We get all the coordinators in the room. We'll talk with everybody. And we got to play better at the quarterback position.
Okay, I'm not saying he's calling him out, Ryan, but he's making it clear. And Kirk said the same thing. I did hear his postgame on the field last night. He said, I got to play better. It wasn't what we want. It's a victory. That's great, but that's not the way we want to get it done. What is the disconnect now, Ryan, that you're seeing from the quarterback position? Why did it work early where he's having these monster games, and now later in the year, you would think you'd be getting better? It's been receding, obviously, in the last 5 weeks.
Well, I think just, teams caught up with Zach Robinson, offensive coordinator. I think that early on they were getting away with some things that were not as coverable as the defense. And, defenses have just kind of caught up with them. Second times teams are playing them in their division. You look back at two of their bigger wins this year. You spoke to the huge performance against the Tampa Bay Bucks, but don't forget, this was a come-from-behind win at Philly early in the year, which stands out big right now in terms of a win for Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. So I just think that these defensive coordinators and the defenses have caught up. I also think now everybody's pointing the finger at Kirk Cousins, and rightfully so, turning over the football, not getting into the end zone. But this defense has been much maligned. They have not produced like they did early in the season. They lost Anderson, their middle linebacker, who was their leading tackler before he got injured. The back end hasn't probably been as good as you would have thought they would be with Simmons and Bates back there. So that's been a part of it too. And Younghoe Koo is just, he had a lull there where there were a few games where his leg would have differentiated between wins and losses this season. So I think it's been a cumulative thing for the team. But like anything, the coach and the quarterback, especially a $50 million quarterback that came from Minnesota this offseason, that's where the bullseye is going to be placed on. And so he's got to play better. And that's a simple thing for Raheem Morris to say. Kirk believes it too. And I think that's understandable for him to say that. The win makes it palpable where they get to go home and they have a little better feeling. And now the next 3 weeks are going to be very, very important for both of them.
Ryan, I'm looking at this remaining schedule. You see the Falcons now to win the South is plus $3, right? You got to lay $4 with the Buccaneers. And I get it. Bucs are one game up. But as we just discussed, Falcons have the 2 victories in hand against Tampa. And you look at the Falcons' remaining schedule, you're going to host the Giants. Sorry, Giants. That probably ain't happening. They got to go to D.C., and then you host the Panthers. So the tough one feels like Week 17 in D.C. Can this team somehow flip this script? And you mentioned Michael Penix. Would you consider, because if you win out, all you need is Tampa to lose 1, and you win the division if you're Atlanta. Is that feasible still with KC8, or do we have to look at going to the rookie?
Well, I think that because they won last night, because they are still a viable option for the playoffs and the division title, I think that limits you to having to play Kirk Cousins. When you have a rookie quarterback like this and making a decision to do this to replace him with a veteran, a guy that was coveted this offseason as a free agent to a 2-year, $100 million deal, you cannot, unless he forces your hand with a 4-interception game. But if they do that, they're going to be out of the running anyway, and then that allows you to do it. So as long as they keep winning, I would believe that Kirk Cousins is going to be your starting quarterback. That seems like the right fit, especially with Raheem Morris at quarterback. Just a few weeks ago, he was talking about how Kirk had carried them, and there is truth in that, but he can't afford to continue to turn the football over in that type of fashion and not get into the end zone. Last night, they settled for a lot of field goals again, and that's not going to win them games against the likes of the Washington Commanders in Washington. That team is a playoff team. That team is playing at a high-paced level, so they're going to have to score touchdowns in that football game. But as soon as that first loss, I think, comes across the board for this Atlanta Falcons team, I think you're going to see Michael Penix Jr. I think you're going to see the rookie out of Washington make his debut because they got to find out a little bit about him, get him some real bullets before they make a big decision this offseason, whether or not the second part of that contract is something that they are, ready to have sit on the bench next season or play in Atlanta.
And Tampa Bay being minus $4 to win the division, their schedule, only one remaining road game. That is going to be this weekend in Dallas, Sunday night. Then they host the Panthers and the Saints. So it looks pretty tenable here for the Buccaneers. If they obviously run the table, they win the division. That's why they're minus $4. On the other side, and Ryan, you know all about this and how difficult it is to play as a rookie, right? So we're talking about Penix coming in, and then we saw Caleb Williams last night for the Bears, and it just has not looked good so far. And I get it. A lot of twists and turns here for his rookie season. Thomas Brown was passing game coordinator, then the offensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach. So he's all these different, moving parts here from the coaching staff. What's the advice to Caleb? Because the body language doesn't look good, right? We saw him kind of laying down on the bench at one point of the game last night. Is that just he's just not used to this? How do you get used to it? Or I guess you don't ever want to get used to it.
Well, USC was absolutely, horrible last year at the end of the year. You saw kind of this kind of body language.
Yeah.
he is very wears his heart on his sleeve type of thing. And some people like that. There's an emotionality. I think his teammates like it. I think his teammates like and know that he cares. The problem I had with Caleb Williams, and it was a simple one. I did not think that's what made him great in college, which was about 75% of what made him great. I didn't think it was applicable to the NFL level. In turn, his playmaking outside of the pocket, and he vacated the back of the pocket. When I figured that out and knew that the 320-pound defensive lineman could outrun me, where that never happened before, I would vacate the pocket and I would get on the edge and I would make a big throw down the field. No, not at this level. At this level, they drag you to the ground. And you're not able to do that. And he just hasn't figured that out. I thought Troy Aikman was really spot on about how, as a quarterback, a sack is a quarterback stat. And if you don't want to take sacks, you're not going to take sacks. That ball's going to come out of your hand. And he simply just did not get the ball out of his hand enough. And that's the biggest thing this year that I think is limiting them, and for the fact that this team does not know how to play in the first half.
It's evident each and every week, right? 4 yards against the Niners. You don't score in the first half yesterday against the Vikings. It's not looking good right now for the Bears. When we come back, Ryan, let's talk more about the Vikings win and what that means now in the NFC North, because we got a two-headed monster up there now with Minnesota and Detroit and Green Bay not too far behind. Come on back. It is the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
On the next episode of Make It Rain with Adam Shine, we're going to break down and recap Monday Night Football's doubleheader between the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears and the Atlanta Falcons and the Vegas Raiders. We'll get into the chase for the NFC North, the NFC South, and whether or not the Raiders are going to get the top pick in the draft. It's a Tuesday. That means the Talk It Out Tuesday on the burning questions in the NFL. Tune in, 3 p.m. Eastern. Make It Rain with Adam Shine, only on VSiN.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
This is the Lombardi Line on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It Continuing the Lombardi Line here on a Tuesday, Dave Ross and Ryan Leaf coming at you here. Ryan, of course, was one time the second overall pick in the NFL draft. We saw yesterday Sam Darnold was, I believe, the second overall pick in the NFL draft, and he got dumped out in New York, didn't work. Third pick in the NFL draft. Thank you, Ryan. Third pick of the NFL draft. He got dumped out of New York, right? Carolina didn't work out. He has a cup of coffee in San Francisco last year, and now all of a sudden you look up, and the Vikings are 12-2. Kevin O'Connell is now the favorite to win Coach of the Year. Ryan, did you see this possibility with Darnold? Because the arm talent's there. When you guys get drafted where you get drafted, you've got the ability. Like, we know the physical traits have to be there, right? It's not like he just lucked his way into being a top 5 pick. He's got the skill set to do it. Why is it working now? Is it as easy as saying Kevin O'Connell is making him, and that's why he's the favorite now to win a Coach of the Year, what we thought he could be out of USC?
You know what? It looks like it's finally coming to fruition that people are starting to understand that some organizations and some coaches aren't very good. All right? It can be a collaborative effort there in those situations. And the New York Jets, systemically, have been a real problem for any quarterback. It has. Since Chad Pennington, pretty much. They have been a dysfunctional organization in terms of developing quarterback play. I thought what he was able to do in Steve Wilkes' year in Carolina was good. I felt like when they got up against elite defenses is where he started to shrink a little bit. His time in San Francisco was incredibly helpful with Kyle Shanahan to watch Brock Purdy play in that offense and have a run to the Super Bowl. And then Kevin O'Connell said, hey, you know what? We're going to go get a rookie quarterback. I need some competent quarterback play. I think he's capable of doing that. The arm talent is through the roof. He's super young still. I think that's one of the biggest things about that Sam Darnold is how young he still is. Like, he came into the league very, very, very young. We've watched this play out with Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. How did Cleveland, a team that's been desperate for quarterback play? I think there was I think that was a little bit of both sides. A contract was offered. Baker didn't necessarily warm to it. And everything that was going on with his family, too, I think that played a little bit into it. But they just discarded him. He went to Carolina. If it weren't for that, whatever it was, a Thursday night or a Monday night game where he shows up literally a day before, gets the playbook, and comes back and beats the Raiders, I don't know if we see this scenario. He decided to roll the dice and go to Tampa instead of stay in L.A. and back up Matthew Stafford, which I thought would have been a good idea, too, to learn more maybe. Mm-hmm. But he goes and he pushes the envelope. He wins the battle, and he's been an unbelievable quarterback. As you see, as the number 1 overall pick, no one's making that decision. The people that are drafted that high, me included, right, it usually has something to do with all its different parts. It's not one thing, It's not the worst thing. It's not the best thing. It's the sum of all its parts on why it doesn't work. And we're so narrow-visioned in terms of, it was this, it was that. No, there's a lot of things that go into it. And to your point, it's not a mistake. The guys that are making these decisions know what they're doing. You look in my case, too, and you go back in 1998 with Peyton and I, there isn't a scout, there isn't a coach, there isn't really a fan anywhere that doesn't draft Peyton and I first or second. It doesn't exist that way. So let's just hold our horses on that. What we're seeing from Sam Darnold and what we heard Troy Aikman talk about last night is Sam's earned himself some money. Has he earned the 3-year, $100 million deal like Baker Mayfield? Maybe. Is it in Minnesota? That's a bigger question. Like, what if they end up winning the division? What if they end up being the number 1 seed, and all of a sudden in the offseason you go, all right, we're ready to throw JJ in there. We'll have Daniel Jones kind of, mend the gap here while it goes. And good luck, Sam, after you just took us to the number 1 overall seed, and who knows where that takes them in the playoffs.
They kind of did that with Case Keenum not that long ago as well, right? A great season, 13-3 in the regular season, I believe, and then kind of moved on from him with the same idea. So this could be the same deal for Sam Darnold somewhere else next year. They are plus 210 to win the division. Difficult road to hoe here for Minnesota. They've got to go to Seattle here this week. Then they've got the Packers before they end up in Detroit, and that's why Detroit is minus 265. to hold on and win this division, even though they're technically tied. And yeah, you're right. Like Ryan, in your class, you know this. Obviously, there was no debate. It was you or Peyton Manning, and the debate was who was going one. Are you going one?
Yeah.
Or like that was the debate. It wasn't like who's going to. Everybody knew you two guys were the best guys coming out. Jared Goff came out, and he was number one overall coming out of Cal. And now I think Jared Goff's kind of looking around and going, oh, no, I just lost David Montgomery. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball for the Lions here going forward. You lose Ali McNeil for the year. You lose Carlton Davis for the year. Khalil Dorsey for the year. This is all from just this past week. 3 defensive starters and David Montgomery. That goes along with Hutchinson, who's been out, and Anzalone, who's been out. And I start to go, like, Ryan, attrition, and you know this on these 53-man rosters, how many more can the Lions take before we start to look at them and go, I don't know that, forget about coming out of the NFC. Can they hold on to the NFC North?
The injury thing is the problem, like you said. I called the Thursday Thanksgiving Day game between the Lions and the Bears.
Oh, wow.
And you just watched in real time the injuries start to displace this defense. We've seen it play out. Now it's affecting the offense, right? You have the two-headed monster in Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and now, is Gibbs capable of carrying the full load? I think he is, but what made them so good is the fact that they could share that load. One was a little more physical when they needed first or second downs. Jahmyr Gibbs was more of their lightning package kind of. I think they were Sonic and Knuckles is what they wanted to be called. And their Knuckles aren't going to be available right now. You're going to have to figure something else out. Jared Goff, though, that's an interesting conversation because, that goes to show the coaching method. That was Jeff Fisher in his final year with the Los Angeles Rams. And his old school method of how he was going to coach quarterbacks. Like Steve McNair fit what they wanted to do, run the football, be physical, use his legs. Vince Young came in and was more of a, he could use his legs, but he was a better passer in that instance. And Vince didn't, develop in a good way in that system. So when Jared Goff got there, it was bend to my will, Jared, not the other way around. And as soon as Sean McVay took over in year 2, he just looked at him and said, okay, we're going to do exactly what this guy does best.
Right.
I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. And they did it so well that they got to a Super Bowl. And so when he got shipped off to Detroit, everybody thought it was just to get rid of a contract, move on until Detroit got their next quarterback. And Jared was not resolute with that. He's become the leader of this football team. He has gone out and done everything needed to do. I'll tell you right now, listen to this stat. A quarterback that's thrown for, I think, 490 plus yards and 5 touchdowns, up to that point this weekend was 16-0. They had never lost. So those statistics were, if you got that statistics as a quarterback, you were winning the football game. This was the first time against the Buffalo Bills last weekend that a quarterback with those statistics lost the football game. Now 1-16 overall over with quarterbacks with these stats. So he's been as good as advertised. He was really great after the game when he talked to the press and said, hey, calm down, all right? We played a battle against maybe the cream of the crop of the NFL right now. We didn't live up to it. We're banged up. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. And he's got a good point. This team is gritty. The conversations around Dan Campbell and the decision-making, I actually think the onside kick was actually a smart move by him. I think I'm going against the grain for most people out there. And I've been very critical of Dan Campbell in terms of some of the decision-making he's made. I actually think that was the right one because they couldn't stop them defensively on Sunday.
Yeah, 12 minutes ago in regulation, down 10, goes for the onside kick, gets returned to the 5. Buffalo scores the next play. You can't predict how that's going to play out, but that was, I understand where the logic is when you're giving up 40-plus points to Josh Allen. You're probably not going to stop him anyway. By the way, I know that, Ryan, you did a little basketball back in your day, certainly there at Washington State. You can play Pick 6 for DraftKings. It's an official betting partner of the NBA. Very easy to get started here. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. You're going to select 2 or more players and choose if they're going to have more or less of a stat like points, rebounds, 3-pointers, or more. Pick 6 players can play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the code VSiN. That's VSIN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. How good of a basketball player were you? Because you're still tall, right?
Yeah, I haven't shrunk yet.
I'm shrinking.
Basketball was my favorite.
Really?
By far my favorite. Yeah. And I remember we were playing the UCLA team in 1995, the team that would go on and win the national championship. And I got dunked on by J.R. Henderson when I went up and I thought I had a great defensive play on it. And he put me in the bucket. And I remember talking to my girlfriend after the game, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I'm made for that part of the game, because they were just a different animal.
They were unbelievable
in terms of athleticism when it comes to that.
Toby Bailey and company. Jim Herrick had a crew.
Oh, yeah, the O'Bannon brothers.
Woo!
Yeah.
Pretty darn good. Could you imagine Jim Herrick in the NIL era? That would be Wild Wild West. Okay, come on back. Matt Youmans going to join the program next here on the Lombardi Line.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to vsin.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network.
on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Tuesday conversation here on the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Ryan Leaf coming at you. Always a pleasure to welcome in the host of VSiN Primetime here on the network. Also hosts the Friday Football Invitational, the one and only Matt Youmans. Joins us now on the Progressive Guest Line. Matt, great to have you back on this Tuesday. Before we get into your observations from last night, if you dared to watch those games, and also what you have coming up this week, how's the Invitational coming along, and who's gaining control of it?
Chuck, the Iceman Edel, Las Vegas Pro Bettor, has got control of this with 3 weeks to go, and we'll see if he can finish strong. But it's, a little bit more challenging, obviously, this time of year. You don't have as many college games to pick from each week. So Chuck Edel, who was the runner-up in 2022, is the leader. And I got to say, it's great to be on the Ryan Leaf, Dave Ross line this morning. What's the new name of this show going to be?
The Leaf Ross line. I mean, we can workshop this thing, man. I mean, there's so many different ways we could go. Ryan and I were talking about the quarterback play that we saw last night, and maybe it wasn't so great on the Kirk Cousins side, and certainly the Caleb Williams side. What was your takeaway from it? Both favorites, depending on the numbers. Certainly with the Bears, the Vikings, easy cover there, but the Falcons maybe a little bit dicier depending on the number you got. What was your takeaway from Monday Night Football?
Well, my takeaway, first of all, was it was not a great night for the NFL. That product that you're watching too often is embarrassing. And you know what? The Bears are a complete embarrassment right now, and so are the Raiders. So you got two of the worst teams in the league on display last night. But, the Vikings did what they had to do, and I really like this Vikings coaching staff. And obviously this NFC North is a tough division, really tough division. One might be the best in the NFL right now, and the Bears are the worst of it. Bears, by the way, 2-14 versus division opponents the last 3 years. I think that organization needs a total rehaul and needs to be rebuilt, new culture, everything. They got to see if they can save Caleb Williams, who looks like he's kind of lost right now. But in terms of the Falcons, I did want to ask Ryan, you're watching Kirk Cousins really struggle. Going into last night's game, he had 0 TD passes and 8 picks over the previous 4. Really unimpressive again last night. Is it time to give Michael Penix a shot, or do you stick with the veteran here down the stretch?
We were talking about this, Matt, to open the show. What probably was the worst thing that could happen if you were hoping to get some Michael Penix this year was that they won the football game. Because I just don't think if you're Raheem Morris, you can step away from the veteran quarterback making $50 million if you still have a real chance at winning the division and going to the playoffs and hosting a first-round playoff game. So that's unfortunately the place they sit in right now. It was good enough against a very bad team. They have some pretty good opponents down the stretch. They got to go on the road and play Washington, I believe, before the year's over. And Tampa does not have a schedule that's, murderer's row or anything. So what I would say is that once Atlanta loses, whether that happens this next week or the following week, I think we'll see Michael Penix Jr. once they've been eliminated from the playoff conversation. Until then, I think Raheem Morris simply has to stick with the guy that he brought to the dance this year.
All right. Yep.
Yeah, it seems to be fair. And again, you see the Falcons schedule here. Giants this week at Commanders. If they lose that one, to Ryan's point, maybe you would see him in the season finale if there's nothing to play for against the Panthers. There's still a lot to play for, Matt, starting Thursday night here to begin the new week in the NFL, and that is the Broncos against the Chargers. Chargers, not exactly sure what happened in that second half against the Buccaneers. Laying the same number they laid against the Bucs. If you laid the 3, it didn't work out there. Are you willing to lay the 3 this week?
Well, I need the Chargers to win one more game to get over 8.5 wins. I'm pretty confident they're going to do it with the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Raiders up in the next 3 weeks. But you got to hope that was an outlier because the Bucs outgained the Chargers 506 to 206.
Oof.
And you look at Tampa Bay had 10.1 yards per pass in that game. And what happened to the Chargers defense? Baker Mayfield looked like an MVP candidate. He hasn't looked like that every week, but he looked outstanding. He and Mike Evans in that game. The Chargers only ran the ball for 32 yards, and without J.K. Dobbins, the running game has not been very effective. But, of course, they fell behind and kind of abandoned the run. In this game Thursday night, I do kind of lean Chargers. I seem to sense they're going to bounce back in this game. But, again, 3 weeks in a row, the Chargers have scored exactly 17 points. They do have Ladd McConkey back, and that makes a big difference in the offense. But Bo Nix, not very impressive again against the Colts on Sunday. And again, the Colts were a cluster. They did everything they could to screw up that game in the fourth quarter. But Nix threw 3 picks, and I think this could be a spot for the Chargers to bounce back. I'm not sure if I'm going to bet the Chargers, but I'm kind of leaning that way right now.
Yeah, I went all in on the Chargers on this one. I just thought they were going to bounce back after a good performance against Kansas City. They came up short. This Chargers team for me is simply a team that can't run the football. And in Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh style offense, if you cannot dictate physical up front by running the football, I don't care how good you are with Justin Herbert, you're not going to be able to put up the points. You're not going to be able to be explosive because they don't have the explosive players. As good as Ladd McConkey's been, he's been more of a possession-type receiver, and Quentin Johnston just has not been able to break out as that mainline guy down the sideline. So I'm probably leaning to Denver with Sean Payton right now, and I hate to do that, but I don't have any real trust in this Chargers team unless they can find a way to run the football again, because that's who they are and that's their identity. And if they don't have that, they don't have anything.
I was a little surprised they actually went away from the run with that 17-10 halftime lead and started throwing it all over the lot. That did not work out. Matt, we've been down the road before in Super Bowls past with Patrick Mahomes. He's got a high ankle sprain. He's probably not going to be able to play. Well, then he always plays. Is he going to play again this week? Are you tempted to take Houston and lay the points on the road in Kansas City if we really believe that 15's not going to go?
No, I'm actually kind of leaning toward the Chiefs in this game. And again, this is kind of a wait-and-see type of game. How many times have we seen Patrick Mahomes limp off the field, and then he's right back on the field looking like Superman? He hasn't looked that great all this season. But Kansas City, 15 drives against the Cleveland defense, 311 total yards. It's 20.7 yards per drive. Pretty poor performance, actually, on a day when the Browns turned the ball over 6 times. I'm not sure which way the Chiefs are going to go here at quarterback. They got something to figure out here because they've kind of got a game to play with when they're up 2 on the Bills, even though the Bills did beat the Chiefs head-to-head. You want to get Mahomes and his ankle healthy for later in the season, but they could mail in the Week 18 game, too, if they can win this one at home. The dilemma here is, do you back the Chiefs with Carson Wentz? Is Andy Reid going to put the game plan together, give the Chiefs a chance to win with Wentz at quarterback? Ryan, I watched Wentz in the preseason. I thought he looked awful. He's only played in 2 games and attempted 2 passes. How much faith would you have in Leaf in this sort of, or excuse me, in Wentz in this sort of situation, stepping in if Mahomes does not play?
Well, with Andy Reid, I have a lot of faith in whoever steps out there. They'll be ready to play. They'll have a game plan that specifically fits to what Carson Wentz needs to do. And I'm a little, because of what Patrick Mahomes talked about, 3 games in 11 days. Don't forget, on Christmas Day, they turn around and have to fly to Pittsburgh and take on the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. So it would not shock me and it would not surprise me completely if we do not see Patrick Mahomes in this football game, or vice versa. We see Patrick here get the win against Houston, and then we don't see him on Christmas Day in Pittsburgh to rest that ankle, get him ready because of that Denver game. We'll see how much that Denver game means with what Buffalo has left. Buffalo has Patriots, Jets, kind of, a pretty walkable final stretch to get to them to a place where if they get a tie situation with the Chiefs, they have the tiebreaker because of the victory over them earlier in the season. So I would anticipate, depending on how this ankle is, if we don't see Patrick Mahomes in maybe one of the 2 games here in the next, 7 days of football for the Chiefs, that would be something that I wouldn't be surprised by if Andy Reid and this training team, athletic training team for the Chiefs have something put in place.
Yeah, and this is that span of 3 games in 11 days, and I know Patrick Mahomes is not thrilled about. It's not going to be helping out that ankle. anytime soon. Very quickly here, gentlemen, VSiN Pro, if you want to be a VSiN Pro subscriber, you should. VSiN.com. We've got everything up for you. College hoops, I know, Matt, you're immersed in it as well. Greg Peterson's got his plays out there. Adam Burke's got a preview of the Frisco Bowl. Zach Cohen on the NBA Cup. It's all there for you. So, again, $79 covers you all the way through May 1st. Of next year, VSiN.com/subscribe. Very quickly, got about 45 seconds, Matt. I just want to get your thoughts on the big one for Pittsburgh against Baltimore next week. And Baltimore taking a lot of money and moving that number up quickly as the week's gone on. Do you think that's the right side?
Well, I want to see if T.J. Watt's going to be on the field for the Steelers because he's so important to that defense, and that's going to be a key factor, when you're handicapping that game later in the week. So I've been on the Steelers frequently this season. I'm not sure if I will be this week. When you said the big one, I thought you were talking about Jaguars-Raiders, so you threw me off.
The game of the week, Matt. How did I forget that?
I know.
Appreciate you as always, my man. Hopping on the Progressive Guest Line. We've got his co-host, Jonathan Von Tobel, coming up in hour number 2. Come on back, Ryan. We've a lot to get to. NFL conversations and quarterbacks galore next here on the Lombardi Line.
Got a good thing coming. Just wait and see. It's a good.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the all-new VSiN Watch app. Now, you can watch and listen to VSiN expert analysis live wherever you are. Missed a show? No problem. Catch replays of VSiN's full lineup at any time. View highlights sorted by sport. Or use the search feature to find specific teams and topics you're looking for. And the best part? It's free for a limited time. Download the VSiN Watch app today. Available now on the App Store and Google Play. And join us on the Sports Betting Network.
VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Lombardi Line here. Dave Ross and Ryan Leaf. A lot of fun having Matt Youmans on in the last segment. We're going to have Mike DeFavo join us in hour number 2, talking all things Steelers and Ravens. Big one at M&T in Charm City. And then Jonathan Von Tobel, of course, is going to join us as well in hour number 2, get his thoughts, not just on the NFL, but also college football. But, Ryan, I loved having you on today because we wanted to ask you about the quarterback position because you know it very, very well. And you also know how difficult it is to play, certainly as a young quarterback in the league. So we wanted to get into the QB corner a little bit with you here. And just if you could give some words of wisdom from what you've experienced and what you know about playing the position. Let's start down in Carolina, because I felt like the mass majority of people felt that Bryce Young had turned a corner, and maybe he still has. And then maybe last week against the Cowboys, that corner turned into a wall. What did you see from Bryce in that game, and what advice would you give to a second-year quarterback who was, as you well know, the number 1 overall pick and the pressure that comes along with being that high of a pick?
Well, when they made the decision, I didn't necessarily agree with it. I thought the Carolina Panthers had done him a complete disservice with how they handled everything last year when they fired Frank Reich, this quarterback coach, everybody that went into it. Then heading into a second season, you get a brand new head coach, brand new offensive system. I've been through that. We're watching Caleb Williams go through that. It dumbfounds me that these organizations worth, billions of dollars cannot figure out how to establish a situation like that. I mean, there's a reason why they're drafting first overall. I get that. But the understanding of, hey, we need stabilization here. We don't need more upheaval when you have a rookie quarterback, and you've just put him in the most awkward, difficult situations. I did feel like he had turned a bit of a corner in Dave Canales' offense, and I think there was a bit of a regression against the Cowboys last week. But listen, Cowboys defense and Mike Zimmer, he can put a rookie in a spin cycle with how much knowledge he has in the league. Micah Parsons is playing at a very high level. They had, they got Bland back at corner. Overshawn is played really, really good. So, I mean, the defense was what it was. And Cooper Rush had a game of a career, in that game where he was just, no matter where he threw it, it was like laser-like accuracy. So, there are games that are going to be like that. Now it's just a matter of how much you can distance them apart as an NFL quarterback. Because you can look around anywhere, and quarterbacks have those types of games. It's just so magnified at the NFL level because it's not like the NBA. You have a bad game, you could turn around and come back the next night or the night after that and ball out. No one's even thinking about what the bad performance was. You have a full week. There's a reason why we do these shows every single day, talking about the line, talking about movement, injuries, and things like that. You have 7 full days most of the time to wallow in a poor performance if you're a media member or if you're a teammate or if you're yourself watching the film. So I like Bryce Young. I think he's got the arm talent. There's not a reason why he's taken number 1 overall. I mean, that's a real thing. Carolina has just become a bit of a problem in terms of who owns it, how they go about their business. I do like Dave Canales, but last week was a bit of a regression from what we've seen the last few weeks before that, where he improved greatly against some very good teams.
Still couldn't believe they closed as 3-point favorites against the Cowboys. First time they had been a closing line favorite in 33 games. It was astounding. They're back to their familiar role this week, 4-point home dogs against Arizona, a game that the Cardinals desperately need. Anthony Richardson, if you were a Colts backer last week, I think you thought, well, we got this. And I know Jonathan Taylor drops the ball. I still don't know why guys are doing that. But that happens, and then somehow not only do the Colts not get the win, they don't even get the cover. They get blown out in the fourth quarter. And it didn't look great again for Anthony Richardson, 17 of 38. Do that math. 172, a couple picks, did have a touchdown. What's the advice for Richardson? Because the physical ability obviously pops, and that's why he was a top 5 pick. But I think detractors are going to say, well, you can be big and strong and run, but can you throw? Can you make the necessary throws? What's the advice for young Anthony?
Yeah, he was placed in a tough spot. He didn't have a first round grade, in my opinion. Most of the scouts I talked to going into that draft did not have a first round grade on him. Yet, Jim Irsay was very enamored with the idea of finding the next quarterback. And, you've put Shane Steichen in a difficult situation. The thing about Jalen Hurts and Shane Steichen in Philadelphia is Jalen was willing to work tirelessly at improving his accuracy and his ability to throw the football. And he did that. And that's something that Anthony Richardson clearly has to do when he is pushed out of the pocket, when he's on the move, when he's throwing from the pocket. Those are the things he has to improve on. Those types of throws have to be second nature, just boom, and away they go, because the athleticism that he has, puts him apart from so many other quarterbacks, and that's why I think people are excited about it. But, as of right now, he's not somebody you can rely on to win games in the NFL week in and week out. So therefore, there has to be a sizable improvement in his accuracy. And sometimes when you talk to a lot of coordinators and coaches out there around improving accuracy, that's a very difficult thing to do, because we're talking about technique, fundamentals. And when you're at that level, your muscle memory is pretty much about what you do throwing the football. You don't change much of that. You are what you are, and you have to go win with that. So we'll see. This has been, if they found ways to win. Flacco was a part of some of it early. What happens here? Do they catch the Houston Texans? It doesn't look like it. So that means they're going to be searching from the outside looking in once again. And then you're going to have to take a hard look. Where do you go back into the draft and you go look for another quarterback? Because I don't know if he's the answer for them in this mold of Anthony Richardson. And it was kind of the same one I had during draft time. And I didn't think you guys were doing I didn't think the Colts were doing him a service by drafting him that high, unfortunately.
I'll tell you, it's a great point about the QB accuracy, because I think it is a misnomer. So I think a lot of people think, you can't really improve that. Josh Allen did, to your point, worked at Jalen Hurts did. So there are guys, there are examples of upper echelon, if not the best quarterbacks in the league that have gotten better with accuracy. Richardson's going to have to put in that work. Maybe another guy that they're going to go up against each other, and I don't know if it's still going to be Will Levis, a quarterback for the Titans. By the way, they're 4.5-point underdogs for the shoe against the Colts this weekend. He likes to put mayo in his coffee. I always get on him for that, but I guess you can get on him for the turnovers too. What do you make of the second-year guy in Tennessee? What's the advice for Will Levis?
Some humility, I think. And I feel like, what happened draft night gave him a certain sense of that humility, so much so that there wasn't a lot of expectation. He sat on the bench. When he got the call, he comes out and throws 4 touchdowns in his debut to DeAndre Hopkins. So he's got the ability, right? He's got the capability of doing this at a very, very high level. Right now, this team's not very good. The offense is not doing what it needs to do. Mason Rudolph looked like he was more in control of this offense against the Bengals, and that hurried comeback in the second half. Bottom line is, and in this league, this is going to be the end-all, be-all as quarterbacks, and I know this better than anybody. You got to take care of the football. And what Will Levis has done of late is been careless with taking care of the football. And if you can't make sure that your team is safe, that a defense that you have that is very sound, is very physical up front, can manage a game, then you're not going to be in there. And so Will has to have a kind of come to Jesus conversation with himself on that about taking care of the football. There's time for risk, and as a quarterback in this league, you have to be able to take some of those risks. That's the problem with Caleb Williams. He just doesn't pull the trigger. He doesn't throw any interceptions for 8 consecutive weeks, but guess what? All 8 of those games have been losses. How does somebody do that? You're telling me you don't have an interception in the 8 games losing streak you have? That means you're carrying the ball really close to the vest and not taking hardly any risk. Will Levis is on the other side of that coin. He just takes a hell of a lot more risk, and the reward has just not come. And what it's done is put him in a very precarious position in terms of being the starting quarterback for not only the Titans, moving forward anywhere in the NFL.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're trying to figure out, do you have a piece there in year number 2, Will Levis? And right now, as you mentioned with Anthony Richardson as well, Ryan, these teams might have to be dipping back into that quarterback pool here in the draft recently, and you didn't expect that 2 years ago when you go back to that draft. When you do, you're going to be looking at those college football teams. By the way, of course, we got college football. The playoffs getting ready to start on Friday, and again, we got a really interesting contest here at VSiN, the Road to Jansanity contest. You're going to put your football handicapping skills. It could win up to $5,000. And the best part, it's free to enter. So your challenge is simple. Pick the games against the spread for every round. The contestant with the most points after the title game is going to win $5K. Head over to VSiN.com/JNsanity for the contest rules and to register. Do not wait. The last date to enter is Thursday, so you get a 48-hour warning. Visit VSiN.com/JNsanity and let the Jansanity begin. Ryan, we have a lot to get to here in hour number 2, and we have a great lineup here. Mike DeFalvo is going to join us, and Jonathan Von Tobel. When we get to JVT, we're going to talk more about those college football playoffs, too, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on it. We got some great games lined up this weekend. Never seen it before. The new expansion to 12 begins this weekend. So don't go anywhere, America. Come on back. It is the Lombardi Line here on VSiN.
And we're out.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I need to load funds into my gaming apps.
Stormy, really, with a